Forget what you know about smart. This is the brand new Smart #1, and these are 10 things you need to know about it. Smart started life in the 90s, owned by Mercedes as a maker of extremely small city cars. Some people may have liked the quirky metropolitan energy associated with the brand, but objectively speaking, the cars were pretty poor and sales were too. In the 25 years since then, things never got much better. Even an electric makeover didn't help, because the Smart 4.2 EQ and 4.4 EQ had minuscule electric ranges, which made them some of the worst electric options around. But you can forget all about those previous Smart products, because the Smart #1 represents a completely new start for this brand. And that's because in 2020, Mercedes signed a deal with Chinese company Geely. Now, if you recognise that name, it's because Geely are the same company who have owned Volvo since 2010. And with the partnership that it now has with Mercedes, they've completely reinvented the Smart brand as an EV-only car manufacturer. And the #1 is the first of a whole lineup of new cars that we're going to see as a result of that partnership. Now, it's said to be a true 50-50 collaboration, with Mercedes taking care of the design and Geely taking care of the mechanical underpinnings of the car. And apparently the same underpinnings that you have in the #1 will also be found in some Chinese electric cars, but over here in Europe there's nothing else that has the same underpinnings as this car just yet, although apparently some electric Volvos in the future might have the same underpinnings. But what is the Smart #1? Well, it is a fully electric SUV with a silly name, and size-wise, it's quite similar to a Peugeot E2008. So if you're looking at this car, you'll be considering that Peugeot perhaps, maybe the Kia Niro EV, the Hyundai Kona Electric, and even though they're not strictly SUVs, this is also a competitor to the likes of the VW ID3 and the Cupra Born. So what's on offer inside the #1? Well, you can see it's got this pretty swish minimalist layout that's got quite an appealing look, and it all feels pretty good as well. So these seats are nicely padded, there's quite a lot of soft touch materials around, and yes, there are a lot of plastics in here, but they're all good quality plastics. They're the kind of plastics that you might expect Apple to use for some of their products. It all feels really quite plush and well built in here. There's also a lot of tech. So there's a 9.2-inch digital driver display here, which you can see is very thin, which means it's easy to see no matter where you have your seat or the steering wheel. It's not the sharpest of graphics, but the placement is really good. Although it does feel like this seat is quite high relative to the low dashboard in this car. But apart from that, the driving position is really good. There's loads of adjustment you can have in the wheel and in the seat, and visibility is great as well. Now, you also have a 12.8-inch touchscreen infotainment system here. And this isn't just a Mercedes infotainment system that they've lobbed in a Smart car and just changed a few of the logos. This is all new. And when you first use it, it's quite baffling and overwhelming because it's got this kind of quirky video game look to things. So it's not like any other infotainment system out there. It takes quite a lot of getting used to, and you have things like this Fox avatar in the corner that pops up on different screens and things. But once you've got your head around it, there are a lot of features on here, and it's got a really responsive screen. There's no lag, doesn't feel glitchy at all. It's just got quite a confusing layout to things, and it's definitely better than what you get in the ID3, just like the build quality. So really, this is an impressive interior. The Smart brand was very famous for making tiny little city cars, but you can see that the #1 is not in keeping with that tradition anymore. So you can really notice that sat in the back here, where there is loads of room. There's loads of headroom. Legroom's also pretty good as well, and you've got a flat floor down here, so if you want to sit 3 people side by side, that's easy to do as well. It's pretty good back here. When it comes to the boot, it's not actually that good. There are other electric cars, this kind of price range, this kind of size, that have bigger boots than the #1. It's not all bad back here though, because as you can see, you've got a pretty flat loading lip here, so it's easy to shove things into the back and get them out again. It's also a very simple shape. There's loads of underfloor storage as well, which is really helpful, especially for the charging cables. On top of all that, you can move the rear seats forwards as well if you want to increase the space that you have in the boot. And when those rear seats are folded, they lie pretty flat to the boot floor as well. But the fact is, there are quite a few other rivals in this price range that have bigger boots than this. There is a front trunk, but it only offers 15 litres of storage, so it's just about big enough for a high-vis jacket, but not much else. The Hashtag 1 gets a 66 kilowatt hour battery, and that is enough to give it an official range of 273 miles. But if you go for some of the more powerful versions of this car, which we'll talk about in a minute, and some of the higher trim levels, then that might eventually drop down to 260 miles, depending on the spec that you go for. Now, that's not a completely game-changing distance that you can travel on a full charge, but it's not terrible either. So compared to the other rivals that this car's up against, it's fine. The charging speed stands out a bit more though. A 150 kilowatt maximum charging rate is faster than the max you'll get in the Kona Electric and even in the Cupra Born. And it means the Hashtag 1 can get a 10 to 80% top up in 30 minutes. That's if you find a charger that's fast enough. If you use a more common 50 kilowatt charger, then you should deliver the same charge in around 55 minutes. A 22 kilowatt charge does the same job in 3 hours. Maybe the biggest surprise with the smart Hashtag 1 is the fact that this is actually pretty good to drive. So it does all the things you want an electric car like this to do. So it's quiet, it's smooth, it builds speed with that typical electric car urgency. Body control's good, and the steering is quite nice actually, although there are 3 settings for it. And in light, that really is only reserved for the final little maneuver to get it into a tricky parking spot, because it is so light that it basically feels like it's not connected to the front wheels. But medium and heavy, and really heavy isn't that heavy, feel really natural, accurate, precise, and it just steers quite nicely. The ride's pretty good as well. At low speeds, we're in a car that's got 19-inch alloys, and it does have a little tendency to thump over harsh road imperfections like potholes or manhole covers. But for the most part, it's really quite settled and smooth in here, and just generally quite a nice thing to drive. The only thing that isn't particularly great is the brake pedal feel. So there's no problem with actually bringing a car to a stop in a safe way, but to do it smoothly is a bit trickier, because it just feels a little bit numb, then a bit grabby, and it's difficult to just reduce your speed very smoothly. But apart from that, this is quite nice to drive. So if you buy a regular Hashtag 1, you get one electric motor driving the rear wheels, it has 258 brake horsepower and it's relatively quick. But if you go for the Brabus version of the car, you get 2 electric motors, it's 4-wheel drive, and you have 422 brake horsepower. So that means that this car that we're in now will do 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.9 seconds, which is like an Audi RS3. And sure enough, it is very quick. However, aside from having 4-wheel drive and a lot more power, there are no major mechanical alterations between the regular Hashtag 1 and this Brabus version. Even the tyres are the same, which means both cars at regular speeds are pleasant enough to drive, but when you push on in the Brabus, inspired by the performance on offer, it's not long before you find it way out of its comfort zone, with sloppy body control through quick corners. This will probably be one of the cheapest ways to accelerate this quickly in an electric car. But it's still going to end up costing more than £40,000, which is cheap for an electric performance car, but very expensive by any other measure. Still, it might disappoint dynamically, but the straight line speed on offer in the Hashtag 1 Brabus might just be the best thing about the new Smart. Whereas the worst thing is the tiny boot. So the new Smart Hashtag 1 is a really good electric car. The only thing that could change this is the pricing. Remember, we don't have official, fully confirmed pricing details yet. So if suddenly it's going to be drastically more expensive than what we've been told now, that could change everything. But for now, this is a great new start for a new Smart brand, and this is a very good electric car. For more information on this car and every other new and used car around, go to whatcar.com, where you can also get a great deal on your next car. But before you go anywhere else, subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments below, what do you think of the Smart Hashtag 1?